council member, at least for another year. I hope that you guys voted in this last election. You saw that there was a little bit of a change. We'll actually be living in District 3 at the next election. And so if you don't know Jennifer Gamble, who manages 3 now, she'll be running for re-election, and I'll be introducing you to her in the coming year. So, but you're stuck with me for another year, and I want to make sure I'm available to you and that we're addressing and answering any questions along the way. Special shout out to neighbors who made this particular application in regard to traffic calming. And we're looking forward to hearing from you guys as to what you want done, and then hearing from the experts as to how to get it done. So I'm just here as a conduit to make sure that it's funded and that we get it done as quickly as possible. So thank you again for spending a little bit of your Monday evening with us. And with that, I'll pass it over to you guys to explain what we're going to do today.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Dorotha, and this is Ariana Martin, and we're traffic engineers here on behalf of NDOT to walk you through the neighborhood program and how it works, the neighborhood traffic calming program and how it works, and then also show you the concept that we came up with to make your street a little bit safer. Okay, so we'll start by explaining the 3 E's of traffic calming. So the first is education, then we have enforcement and engineering. So our main focus as traffic engineers is pretty self-explanatory, it's engineering. But it's not the only way to make a street calmer and make people drive more slowly along it. It's just as important to educate people that are passing through your neighborhood, and enforcement is an important aspect as well. Unfortunately, we can't do it all. We're not officers of the law, so we just came here with some engineering solutions for you. All right, so what is traffic calming? So to start with, our program focuses on residential streets. So we want to really focus on the streets that are getting people to and from their houses versus the streets that are transporting you to further destinations. So the streets where people are going to be walking their dogs, taking their kids to school, things like that. We want to make sure that those streets are the ones that we're focusing on. So we provide physical solutions. We'll go through what that entails a little bit later in the presentation, but sometimes it's vertical measures, sometimes it's signage. It can look a variety of different ways. The purpose of it is to reduce speeds because essentially we want to avoid collisions if we can, and if a collision does occur, we want it to happen at the lowest speed possible to keep everyone involved as safe as they can. So our program focuses on encouraging low speeds over significant lengths. So we pick stretches of roads that we want to get people to drive more slowly along. Okay. So now a little bit more information about the specific program that we're working with NDOT on. It's a street program, not a neighborhood program. So I'll explain a little bit about what we mean by that. So we analyze street by street, collecting data on an individual street and seeing where the exact problem areas are, where are people going over the speed limit by an unacceptable amount. We're looking for the places where we can have the most impact. So we implement devices to reduce speed and increase safety. Unfortunately, resources are limited, so we have to be selective about how we choose the streets that we're going to implement on first. Obviously, we're trying to get to as many streets as we possibly can. We just have to do them in order of which ones are the most dangerous at a given time. This program that we're here explaining isn't the only way that you can make your neighborhood safe. Hub Nashville is a great way to reach out directly to NDOT and let them know if there's a problem on your street, if there are signs that are down, if there are potholes, just anything that's going on your street. Unfortunately, NDOT can't be everywhere. So we really rely on our community members to let NDOT know what's going on in your area. Walk Bike Nashville is a great resource if you want to improve mobility in your neighborhood, if you want to get sidewalks, if you want to get bike lanes, things like that. There's also the Beautification Commission that can add things like planters or trees, just anything to make your neighborhood better and safer and a happier place to live. Okay, so now we'll get into the application process, which you guys have already gone through, but here's an idea of what that looked like for those of you who may not have been involved. So we have an incredible amount of demand around the county, as you can imagine. There are a lot of streets that need attention. So in our last cycle that we just completed this summer, we got 426 neighborhood streets sent in to us to look at. So we collected data, we analyzed all the streets, and we selected the top 27 streets that needed our urgent attention. And so the street that we're here to address was one of those streets, which is obviously not a title that you want to have, but we're here to help you get off of that list.
How do you collect the data?
So we take counts of how many cars go along the street. We measure the speeds, like the average speeds of cars that are passing along the street. So we work at a consulting firm, and then we also sub-consult to firms that collect that sort of data.
They usually use like I'm sure you've driven over them before. It's like a big tube in the road. And so to measure, that'll count like the number of times like someone drives over it. And then we can kind of tell the type of vehicle based on how many times the wheels are going over that tube. We can tell speed based on how quickly it goes over that tube. And so we'll have those out at different spots for usually.
I just don't recall using that on my streets. That's what I was wondering. I have.
So we're typically collecting on like maybe an average day. So it may have gone out on a day that you didn't drive over it or anything. We usually do 24-hour counts, right?
Yeah, we usually do 24-hour counts. And then those are usually ideally taken when school's in session to obviously get those conditions, and then avoiding holidays if possible.
Fortunately, you have our traffic count expert with us today. She deals with those a lot more than I do. Okay, so this lays out how we prioritize those streets once we collect the data that we need. Out of 100 points, we'll basically use 50 points to weigh how much faster than the speed limit people are going. Neighborhood destinations, so that that's basically like libraries, schools, things like that, like places that people might want to walk to. Active transportation, so if you have sidewalks or not, whether people are forced to walk in the street with where the cars are driving. And then crash history, which is basically how many crashes have occurred within 5 years of when we're taking our measurements. Okay. So now to your neighborhood specifically. So the street that was selected was Williams Avenue from Walker Terrace to Gallatin Pike North. There were other streets on your application, but again, we weigh each street that is applied for individually. So Williams Avenue was the one that needed some urgent attention. So that's the one that we're here to address today. This is the map showing the project area. And then in green, you can see the streets that were also applied for, but I guess fortunately, we're not in need of as much attention as Williams Avenue. Okay. So we're going to transition into kind of showing you our toolbox, what kind of traffic calming measures we typically use to make a neighborhood safer. But I did want to stop to make sure that I answer any questions about the program itself if you guys had any.
Has the survey been going on?
So the 5-year, we have statewide crash data for most, if not all, the streets in Tennessee that's collected by TDOT, like the state agency. And so we use that to let us know where crashes have happened in a particular neighborhood. Yeah. So I have that in a spreadsheet, which I can give to you after the presentation. Okay. So first up are seat cushions, which is kind of the bread and butter of our program. You're going to see a lot of these going out. on our project sites. They are rubberized vertical measures that we put in. Here you can see 2 examples of how they go in, but what I really want to call attention to is the gaps that you see in between the cushions. That's so that emergency vehicles have an easier time going over them. Ideally, their wheels can straddle the center one so that we're not jostling people as they're going through traffic on an ambulance. So yeah, so that's number one.
What about the pole in the middle?
Oh, good question. So, as you can see here, this is a 2-lane road with a center line. And so sometimes depending on the width of the road, there's enough space between the cushions that someone could try to like squeeze their car down the middle, which we want to discourage people from trying to do stuff like that, because that makes it even more dangerous if people are driving up the center of the road. So we put things like delineators to discourage people from trying to like squeeze between the cushions if there's too much of a gap. I don't know yet.
They're on the street as it is without hitting the phone pole and knocking on the wall.
Oh, goodness. Well,
I can tell you how many times mine's been up,
okay.
and I've had a brick.
Well, if your street is narrow enough that that's happening, we would not likely be putting a delineator in the middle of it. So next up, we have signage and markings. Especially on higher volume streets, like I said, we typically try to stick to neighborhood streets. Sometimes vertical measures aren't the ideal solution. So these are called radar feedback signs. I'm sure you guys have seen them around town. They're the ones that tell you how fast you're going compared to the speed limit. So those, they give the driver an indication of how fast they're going, because not all of us are keeping an eye on our speedometer as we're cruising along a road all the time. So sometimes it's good to just see a visual reminder as you're driving that like, hey, this is the speed limit. This is how fast you're going. Try to slow down a little bit. And then we also have pavement markings. This is a more creative option that we don't use a lot of, but just some sort of pavement marking to call people's attention to the road as they're driving over it. We also do narrowing, which you'll see in some neighborhoods around town. Essentially something like this, where if we have these dashed lines to kind of narrow the lane to, again, if you're on a narrow road, you're naturally gonna drive a little bit slower, right? And so this, even though it's not a physical narrowing, it's just like a visual narrowing so that people are more, people are encouraged to drive more slowly because the road isn't as wide. And then over here, we have more of a physical narrowing where there are bike lanes, parking, stuff like that, that forces people to drive on a more narrow roadway. So we have speed tables, which are very similar to the speed cushions. We tend not to use speed tables as much as the cushions because they don't have those spots in between for the emergency vehicles to have use. We also have traffic circles. You'll see some of these around town. Again, it makes, if there's an intersection that's really wide, people kind of careen through there a little bit faster than they should sometimes. So this just makes, it puts a physical obstacle in the middle of an intersection like that so that people have to, again, focus more to kind of get through it. And as you can see, there are physical barriers to keep people from traversing it, and also so that people notice it in the dark if they're not expecting it. These are a less common one. These are called chicanes. I don't know that we have any of these in Nashville yet, but essentially, again, just making the road something that people have to think a little bit more about as they're driving through it. Okay, so now that we've gone through our toolbox, this is an overview of the program that you guys are currently in the process of going through with us. So you've already done your application. We take those 2 times a year. And then we do our data collection, we evaluate the applications. We select roughly 27, again this year, roughly 25, sorry. This year we picked 27. We advertise the meetings through mailers, which some of you all received. I can go a little bit more into detail about why not all of you received a mailer. So we send the mailers out based off of property owners who are directly, whose property directly touches the streets that we're addressing. Depending on the neighborhood, it can be very complicated when you start trying to address all of the people who might use a road, but not necessarily live on it. Because if you think about it, if you have a subdivision that has 40 homes in it, or you have multiple subdivisions that have like, 50, 60 homes, where does it end? So to be fair to everybody, we send out mailers to the people who live on the street. And if you would like to involve more of your community, we welcome everyone to come to the meetings.
There were over 800 people.
Yeah. And well, thank you for helping get the word out. Okay, and so then we come to the neighborhood and we give an overview of the program, the toolbox, and the concept that we've come up with. After we get some feedback from you guys here today and via email later on, we're going to refine the concept. We'll come out and do a site visit. We'll, get boots on the ground to see the neighborhood ourselves. We'll make some more detailed plans, and we'll schedule another meeting with you all, and we'll present our more detailed plans. And then we get to do ballots. So you'll get 3 rounds of mailers for this process. So you already got your first one for meeting 1. You'll get a second one for meeting 2. And then the third one is super important for ballot. So that is how you're going to vote, to let us know if you agree with the measure or not. There's a 6-week window for you to respond. And if 66% of respondents, so 2/3 of respondents, have to vote yes for us to move forward with implementation. So once that 6-week window ends, we'll tally up the votes. If we have enough yes votes, then we'll order the materials and install the devices, and you guys have traffic calming on your street.
If I can jump in just on that. That's sort of new. The previous applications, once he got to design phase, then the folks in the neighborhood have to then go and actually get signed. So this is a lot easier, but at the same time, there may be folks that are not responding, that it's an online form or they didn't do the thing, but there's still going to be opportunities. If we get to the point where that 6-week window is closed and we only have 50%, we need another X amount of households, then I jump in and try to figure out who's not responding that should, and then go knock on doors, just so that we don't end up with a situation where just because they weren't able to respond, or perhaps they were a renter, but we needed the landlord to respond, that we address that. So know that there's sort of a safety net. So if we get to that point and we're still missing the number of favorable votes, that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up. So sort of.
When the mailers go out, do they go to the renter's address?
Go to the property owner.
Now, we can show you the concept that we have for the street that we're working on, Williams Avenue. So when we were looking at your street, we realized that all of the residences are concentrated over here on the left side of the railroad tracks that are kind of running through the screen. Excuse me?
Yeah, there's
More residences coming over here.
on both.
Okay, well, that's why we're here, to get the on-the-ground feedback that we don't know from the office. Okay, so there's more residences coming in this area is what I'm hearing.
No, I'm sorry. Over the railroad track.
Here. Okay.
Yeah, I can I'll help a little.
Thank you.
And this might help for you guys too. So first of all, the train track, CSX is behaving a little bit better, yes? Okay, we'll address that then, because there's a way, when the train stops, it's right. Problems. So we're working on that some more. There's a way to get better at it. But for today's discussion on this side of the train tracks, you have a business there, and then you have the property that they own directly to the west. And then you'll have homes where that green space is there further. Yeah, second, the second, up there. Homes there. And then, of course, we now have homes at the end of the street and the townhomes from Urban Housing Solutions on this side. So all of the property, you're right, on the north is heavy density, but there are going to be homeowners on the south side of Williams Avenue as well. And those property owners are aware of the traffic calming. There's going to be sidewalks added. Sorry. Okay, sure. So there'll be, that was fun. Go.
You can see
There it is. Okay. So there'll be,
I think it's probably easier if you look at this.
okay, sorry, you're right. Okay. So there'll be the properties that are here now, you're not showing up on that screen. And then properties here and here, and they'll be building sidewalks on that frontage. And then this business is planning on activating, building a larger campus, and they'll have sidewalks. So over the course of the next couple years, you'll have a sidewalk along Williams Avenue now, which would be great. So when you go out there, you'll see it. And then, of course, everybody's seen those townhomes go up from Urban Housing Solutions. And so those are going to be individual property owners. And so I don't have the count as to how many new homes that you don't see on this photograph that you are seeing. But most of the density is to the north, but there is absolutely more housing coming to the south. All except for where we all know where the water goes. So there won't be any housing. So, but that helps a little bit. But there's a major situation, particularly I think with the train track that's causing some of the speeding, I think, because people want to try to beat the train, or they get stuck with the train and they get angry and they try to speed up. And so I'll continue to give you guys information as to what we're doing to talk to CSX about making sure that the train is in the big picture, because it absolutely has a direct effect on the road.
This is why we have these neighborhood meetings, because we can't be everywhere. Yeah, what's up?
Okay, so I have a question to street. If I live in that area, then the streets in a very bad street. And one off on one side, and you know, that it's caused bumpy. I wait till everybody pass me out around. So in doing traffic calming, you all address that issue with the deterioration of the street, or do you just do your traffic calm?
So we just do traffic calming. If there is deterioration on the street, that would be handled by another part of NDOT. So I would recommend putting in Nashville requests, and we can also, we're taking notes and feedback and stuff today, and so we can take that back to our contacts.
Schedule
Mhm.
and see, because one of the things is that you guys go through this process and decide that it is speed humps that you're getting put in, they can be taken up and repaid and counted back down. So
And we'll be sure to let our contacts know at NDOT, and they can pass your notes along to, yes.
So one thing, what she's talking about, I haven't got out physically looked at that area. What it is, there's a moose lodge over there. It looks like they put crush and run down for them to drive in and out of. And when it rains real hard, all that ends up out on the road, and it's like concrete, speed bumps.
Oh,
You go down through and it's like right there. And so, I mean, that's what it is. You can go over there, if you go over there and you scrape it, I mean, I've almost thought about doing it myself. I wouldn't put it back in the driveway though, because it's just gonna end up all back in the road. But if you go by there and look, you go over the railroad tracks, those lights on the right hand side.
Yeah.
To the left of that property, there's a driveway. I think they tried to brush and run there.
Okay.
And so when that turns around and when it washes, all that ends up out in the street. And then everybody runs over it, and just packs it down. It's like a concrete speed.
That's-
And you go sit on it, it's also a very narrow road. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it'll be like, wait, hold on a second.
Okay.
It is, I'm sorry, I was the back. It is really important when that happens to report on PUB because it's a codes issue as well as a right of way issue. So they go to the Elks and say, it's also, as we know, been a lot of construction up and down the road. They're supposed to repair exit cave. And I know that usually whenever we've had that type of construction, that then it gets on the repave list. And so I made a note to find out when it's on the list, because it could be up for the summer for repaving. That would help us know what this means to that. But if it's not scheduled until 2024 for repaving, then I can try to push it up so that it makes sense.
So that's part of it. And a lot of people already know to kind of go around it. I mean, everybody does that. That's where I'm at next. Right after that, about 10 or 15 feet, you have that veterans home right there. They've actually built a little concrete thing that comes out in the road. Yeah. What it was is when they built their drive coming down to the street, the concrete got too thin. So anytime somebody drove over it, it just cracked and it kept doing it. So they built a little thing almost like
In the right of way?
in the road. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little edge. I mean, it's not like it's way down. I mean, it's this much.
And that's a codes issue too, if they're not doing.
House lot has a U-shaped drop. That comes back down, and that's the drop.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess. But this, I mean, this is great discussion because, we haven't had like a neighborhood meeting about things like this. This is really helpful. But what's great is this puts a spotlight on the street, right? And so if, Metro spending, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000 in traffic calming on the street, then we need it to be a decent street.
I can fund that if they would spend 2 days
So,
as the
yeah.
stop sign.
But it is curious to me, though, if some of the problems that you're facing are actually code violations, and we can fix that while we're still in.
Have you all had a chance to drive down through there?
No,
Yeah, curiosity.
no, not yet. On my way home today, I think I will, since I'm in the area.
And like when people get stopped at that train, if this thing's on, they're like, damn it. Because they were trying to cut through
Yeah.
and cut out that alley and the whole
Agreed, yeah.
intersection. And people, because I live on Walker Terrace, and people will, like, if they like been stopped by the train, and
They're trying to make up time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And kids walk to school, like,
A lot of it has.
And so that's part of what we're trying to deter people from doing with this, just make it a little bit less convenient of a cut through. That people will think twice about zooming down a neighborhood street to try and bypass a larger street. Yes.
I have another question. I don't know if this should be addressed. In this day and age, but it should be addressed. Y'all talked about sidewalks. What side you gonna put them on, both sides or one side?
No, it'll be an obligation of the new developments on the south side.
Which side is that?
That's, on the, this is school side. School side, yeah.
Oh,
So as they build sidewalks, as a matter of being in the USD, you have sidewalks. There'll be sidewalks, under this new development right on the other side as well, but they're not hooking up yet, so.
So let's stop then at the new development.
Yeah, the sidewalks do end where the property, ends, until new development, but you're gonna, because the business is planning on redeveloping, they should be able to connect. So you have sidewalks from the train track to the street up.
It's way past the
gonna
bridge and down to the substation of the.
No,
Substation.
just where the property is on Williams, up to that. Up to that.
The phone substation.
I forget what street it's called.
Walker Terrace. Because there's a new development that's leasing, but they don't have, well,
Interior sidewalks.
interior sidewalks.
Yeah, I need to drive back down there too, and it's, saw the townhomes popping up. So-
Those apartments or?
No, they're actually, excuse me.
Oh, no.
They are, for sale townhomes for new homeowners, but, subsidized through the urban housing solutions in Barnstable, so that property owners can make a minimal down payment towards ownership. So they'll be homeowners as opposed to renters. Just that funny little triangle where all those townhomes are, be homeowners.
By the railroad track, okay.
They sound. They sound like they got it.
I'm always getting close to the train.
I knew that would be right back.
Would it help if they had the traffic lights on Gallatin Road synchronized?
I know that the overall plan for transit is to make sure that whenever we have that 56 line, get its designated lane, then they'll be able to trigger those along with it. But it's Gallatin Pike, as you know, is under the direction of the state and not.
They're not doing a good job. They're not doing a good job because the lights conflict. You pull out on one light that's green, but then you don't go less than a block because the next light's red. And so you've got a congestion.
TDOT and WeGo continue to collaborate.
And the potholes there, those are people.
That's TDOT. But you can report them on the hub.
So it wouldn't be NDOT.
No, NDOT is, are the neighborhood streets. The state routes, like Old Hickory Boulevard, Gallatin Pike, Nickerson Pike, State Route 45. Those are things that Tennessee Department of Transportation. But you can report problems on them on the hub and they give them to. Same thing for Ellington Parkway. Sorry to hijack.
Oh,
No, you're
no,
fine.
you're good. This is great. We're gathering people, we're solving problems. Okay, so yeah, this is the concept for your street. We're looking to put in 4 sets of speed cushions. Again, just to make that cut through less, less attractive. For people who are trying to get from Old Hickory Boulevard to Gallatin or vice versa.
So is this done with the Williams, this is designed speed limits?
No, this is, that would, the final design, after they look at it, back to you guys and say, our original idea is exactly what we think is still appropriate, and it's like.
So right now, we just have a concept that we brought along with us, which is our ideas. But when we do some field work and take some feedback from the community, we'll come with a more fleshed out design for the next.
It is such a narrow road, it's hard to.
I like the creek on there.
Can I highlight the what?
The creek.
The flood, the little flood area, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
The creek goes,
that goes underneath things out.
it's,
I can pull up toward it.
line.
Oh, that's a great.
It's where, and the new homes are gonna be on either side. of
That's
the
on the road.
Mhm.
I just want to know where the speed humps is in relation.
Oh, okay.
She just-
I know.
Well, you know where the creek. I don't have to tell you where it is.
Yeah, and so right now, these are just kind of rough placements of just showing you the spacing that we're thinking of for them. And again, after we take a closer look at the neighborhood, we'll have more exact placements. We're always going to avoid putting them directly in front of someone's driveway or in an intersection or anywhere that they obviously shouldn't be. Yeah. I feel like it's a little late for this, but questions?
So will you put like a full stop?
That would be handled separately because stop signs are traffic control devices. So we would have to study the volumes of traffic coming out. Likely, if they're adding, I guess, another leg to that intersection, you're going to have to control traffic through the intersection somehow. So you would likely have a four-way stop there. But a traffic study would have to be done to decide what the proper traffic control measure for that would be.
What's going out there? Is that gonna be an actual street? Or is it just part of their apartment?
And it's on the, I don't want to make sure I understand this question. At the end of Williams where the Walker Terrace is,
Right.
and there's the new development. And, yeah.
It'd be an actual street.
Yes, I believe,
Name.
because that was the discussion with those folks, gosh, 3 years ago. The road will connect to Liberty. So it'll.
That's good. But then it comes down to Williams, will that be an actual street? Is that just?
It's gonna be actual street. They're gonna be able to come by our house.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of tell.
We'll have more updated.
And you know, because it's hard, all that. green space you see
Say they'll come out.
Are they planning on putting a traffic light in the wings?
No, there won't be any traffic signals.
Cause it's gonna be even harder to get out on Skeleton Road.
Oh, yeah, on that area, you're too close to the heritage to put in the. Because you've got the one at Madison Station Boulevard and the one at Heritage Drive. You should pull up that.
So we're talking about Yellow's Road.
Talking about the same thing.
The traffic light at Skeleton Road will be set.
You got these homes or whatever, you're gonna have an.
Is this where you're talking about?
The end of Williams Avenue to the left. The end at Walker. And then you stop their building, right where you see the word Williams.
Right there where it says Williams Avenue right there.
Walker to that, like this right here.
Williams Avenue.
Where the M is at.
Okay, so right here.
Yeah, this is, whatever this is, apartments, condos.
So you see there's a dead end. There's a connection somewhere.
People going up. Yeah, they're gonna connect right there. You can already see where they got the street kind of.
See where all this is all apartments.
Oh, okay.
And it connects.
So Liberty Hill is gonna connect. Yeah.
There you go. So it creates a.
So the street across the back next to it, that's what I was wondering, is it actually gonna be a street coming straight down the Williams? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the street. That's what I'm asking, are they gonna put a four-way stop where the M is at?
Right now, it's just.
Because if you're coming to Williams, you wanna turn left. you're parked.
Again, I could speculate that they might, but
Yeah, I
we
mean,
would,
you know, it's like once it's all, if it's all built out and then they do the final, you know, they do the inspection, NDOT will say. You control the traffic better.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't know what phase they're in because there's. I know that there's gonna be some green space and some public, green space there to be able to play
And that's it.
Yeah, in between. And then they'll just around it. These things take so long to build, but I never know
Right.
what phase they're in. But ultimately, Liberty Hill Drive.
So what do we need to do if we need traffic, calming in that neighborhood? How do we go about doing that? Because I was one of the ones opposed to, the streets.
Me too.
So what would we issue?
End up
I'm
requiring-
sorry.
My name is Jara.
John.
Jara.
So Jara, as a community, what do we do to see if we can get the calling on our street,
Liberty.
on Liberty Hill?
So that was, yes, you'd apply for traffic calming. And then we'd come out and we'd take measurements and we would run it through our prioritization process, see where you land on the list with the other streets. And then if you unfortunately land in one of the top streets, then we would come out and do traffic calming.
So what's the likelihood of traffic calming in a residential neighborhood like ours? Is that common, or do you all just deal with the main street versus?
So we focus on residential streets. If it's within a subdivision, we don't typically work on those because those are like, I guess, privately owned roads that kind of are within a subdivision neighborhood, if that makes sense.
Yeah, these are public streets, but it's like the, traffic calming that's happened in Madison include, the Gibson Drive, right? If you go over into Oakland Acres and see all of the work they did through Oakland Acres, there's examples of speed humps and, little roundabouts and all kinds of things they did over there that seem to be working quite well. East and West Marthona are in, did the online ballot and they're going to construction now. So East and West Marthona are gonna have speed humps. And then we're in meeting 2 for Fort and the Kemper Drive area. So, and that's been extremely dangerous. The hills, you can't see. So I'm particularly pleased that Williams, being a street that's actually under renewed development, is being addressed now as opposed to waiting. But at the same time, for the folks at Liberty, I think it's going to be the completion of that construction and the connection of the roads to see whether or not that relieves traffic or creates traffic situations. So you may be appropriate. The development is done next spring to make the application, because it goes from July to, what's the next one would be?
This,
I think we're.
yeah, this window closes August 19th.
Yes.
Thank you,
So-
Gil. Yeah.
I think the next.
Yeah, so we're
next
taking
cycle, I
applications
think
right
is in the spring. To be able to go, okay, like make a note on your calendar, this is done, and I'm gonna go ahead and get something reviewed next spring. See whether or not traffic calming that we put in on Williams had any effect. Because, it's like, right, you no longer want this road, so now they're gonna go to this road. That kind of thing. But I think that the way it's gonna force you, it actually will create its own traffic calming, because you'll be able to get out of more than. Won't know until it happens.
For guesstimation on how long it takes from design to meeting to, like, when do we need to start?
Do you guys know what the turnaround is? We're asking your question to our NDOT contact to make sure we're giving you the best information.
That's the only way we're gonna be looking for meeting too.
Right.
Well, I guess while we wait for his response, I'll give you my best guess, which is, I would say probably around a month to 6 weeks. That gives us time to get any feedback from the neighborhood, to do the site visit, to work on the design and schedule another meeting and then come here in person to see you all again.
Seems like a really simple thing, right? You look at a map and you put them in, but engineering of how narrow that road is and what might need to happen before they're put in and whether or not we need to get whether or not, you know, it's the acquisition for right of way is a very long process.
So our NDOT contact got back with us and he kind of echoed what Jara just said. So ideally around 4 to 6 weeks, but that's also dependent on, you know, all the other streets that we're working on. We're trying to schedule and do designs for those too. So probably around 6 weeks, I would say.
You already got the design figured out on this order?
We have like, this is more of like a concept plan, but kind of as you mentioned, like, we don't want to place them like around driveways and anything like that, like based on the condition of the road. We really want to have boots on the ground first before we're, you know, handing y'all plans with exact locations for everything. So that in our second meeting, this set of plans is going to have like, you know, approximate distances from driveways. So you can really like drive that street, say, okay, our cushion is going to go like right here and have like a better idea versus us showing you that like little PowerPoint presentation, like, it's roughly over here and you don't really know. So once they start construction or I'd say a couple of days, since
I think installation's pretty quick.
yeah, it's pretty quick. It's not gonna be like a whole disruptive ordeal for y'all. Cause these are rubberized and they just get drilled into the pavement. For your condition or for this street, since the pavement of the road could be an issue, I'm not sure how that would factor in since again, we haven't physically been there. But typically it's only a couple of days depending on the length of the street.
Do they hold up pretty good?
They do. I think the lifespan of these has been
I think
at
it's
around 10 years.
so the suppliers essentially say that their lifespan is about 10 years, but there are some that have been around town for even longer than that. So they last a long time. And if any of them get damaged, just reach out to NDOT and they'll get replaced.
And we've had a lot of people who express concerns over, say your road gets plowed during snow, like, is that gonna ruin the speed humps? But the good thing about these, right?
It's wishful thinking, but
I know. A lot of people do ask, but you know, like, that's the good thing with these is that you can pull them up and they're pretty easy to replace. Like if anything were to happen to them, that's just part of our regular maintenance. So it wouldn't be like you'd go through the application process again to get them reinstalled. It would just be like, hey, this speed cushion is having issues. Can you replace it? And it would just be a matter of ordering it, installing it.
yeah. And if you look closely, you can see that they're actually modular installations. So if just this little patch of it got damaged, they can just replace that one patch of it without having to rip out the whole thing and start over.
Yeah, but if you want to experience them, you can drive down to Gibbs.
But they also have students. What? So students.
Yeah, because people are trying to drive around them. Usually it's required and it's a license. They're trying to drive around them. So we do those, and it's
Any other questions?
So I came here late, I apologize. We all understand that the issues start between Gallup and Hickory and people using this entire thing as a shortcut, which is very dangerous. I've seen wrecks people being. So I just want to understand that your committee has deduced that 4 cushions were the first attempt to blow this down on Williams. And that's where we're at with it.
Yes.
Want to go any further? Would it behoove any of you for us to show you like a little examples of what's going on more in this?
The extra streets that were also applied for this, I'm in an agreement that you have a situation where you have a school, you have a playground, and you have this cut through, and so additional, review, for the drive all the way to Old Hickory Boulevard would be smart while we're looking at it.
People will start on Old Gridiron, they're like, sweet, I don't want to sit in this school zone. I will cut through, cut down Walker Terrace and then Williams, and then just cut it all out. And I mean, I had one girl, it was an issue. She was going so fast down, there was a stop sign, nobody stops at it on Walker Terrace, and she was going, so she didn't have to stop, but she was going so fast that she hydroplaned her car, jumped over my ditch, which is like a 3-foot ditch, and basically got stuck in my car.
Oh my God.
And that has not happened just the one time.
This field right above that red dot is, the field for the school.
Well, I guess
And
what I'm
the-
asking though,
It's,
or so was, are you guys taking this info we're giving you back to the committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're just 2 members of a much larger team.
Is
Right.
there anything else you'd like to hear? Because I can clarify it.
We will take all the feedback you guys have for us. That's what we're here for.
Can I walk up there? Or
Oh,
be on the line? Name and check.
okay.
So, all right, first and foremost, this traffic from here to here, people want to forego these because they want it, they're coming down this way, they're heading the west side, heading east. They want to forego getting all the way down here to Cal. There's a clear cut there at, right where the BOU is, that street, that's called Gray. And as you go perpendicular to that, it's Pima. And then this is Walker or something else. Right. So people will come, they will use Gray and Walker to get to Pima and blast up there. That's not the worst. The worst is when they come up this way. And so you guys are right about the speed limits, along here. But however, there is no stop sign at the end of Williams before you have to turn left. There is not one. There is one at the end of Walker Terrace as it hits Pima, and there's one at the end of Walker as it hits Williams. But I think what I see the most are people blasting through here and not even stopping around that corner and just going down the. That's the worst out of all. So a stop sign at the end of Williams before they turn left, I think would be essential. They just built condos right there. There's new people on the corner with a child. That is a dangerous. That's where I saw a head-on collision on 5 or 6 o'clock on a Friday night, where no one stopped coming this way, and this person didn't really stop. But if there were a stop sign there, I think it could slow it down.
we might even look at.
You know what I mean?
Maybe at the very least, even some additional stops out there every once in a while, like.
Yeah, that didn't do anything. Yeah, they would. They would think they don't.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate, like, while we understand your concern, unfortunately, that's not something that we can do through the traffic calming program. But again, if you want to have a stop sign considered, that would be something through Hub Nashville that you're more, yeah.
That's
But yeah, unfortunately, it's just not in our purview, but we will take that back, and it really helps when y'all like put that in Hub Nashville, so that way the proper people can get to it.
Can they come next time?
I don't think that they can come to traffic calming, but
Right there a little bit, because when we did traffic calming in Sterling, it included stop signs. And so if I could, as the council member, just say, let's look at putting a stop sign at the end of Williams. It's on Williams, it's on the plan. It's passed. Because we put quite a few stop signs and flashing. It's kind of the same thing like the ones that you talked about where it's only with speed. So I don't think that's too much to ask at all. So-
We can take that feedback. As she did mention, unfortunately, stop signs aren't considered traffic calming, they are traffic control, and so we can't put them in unless they're warranted. Section.
Yeah.
So we can take this feedback to the proper members of the broader NDOT team who can study and decide if one is warranted in that location. With the developments that you've mentioned coming in that will be that intersection, they've likely already studied that intersection if they're going to be adding more traffic flow to it. And so they'll need to add traffic control to it of some sort. I don't know if it'll be stop signs, if it'll be signal. I'm not involved in the project, unfortunately. But there will be traffic control if.
Can you remember how many?
Yeah. So a
It's
traffic,
just at that one spot.
yeah.
And down at the railroad tracks, there's probably gonna be
And if
50, 60 more.
So part of a requirement for a development of that size would be to do a traffic study. Ariana does a lot of those. Studies at that intersection to make sure that it will be able to operate safely after those units are fitted.
I'll work on this.
were there any other questions more specifically about the cushions, placement with them?
Good evening, the library will be closing in 30 minutes. 8 o'clock. The chairs are set down. Minutes. We're just vacating those libraries.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Thank you for coming out.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending. It's great to see your faces in person.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's a guilt. Your email?
Oh,
And then.